Hello and welcome. My name is Gabriel, and today we are doing something that none of us thought would ever happen, and that is the final War and Peace Book Club discussion. That's right, folks, the WAP Book Club has come to an end. Today we are discussing the epilogues. I'm gonna keep it kind of brief because I've been pretty vocal about the fact that the epilogues are my least favorite part of the book, especially the second epilogue. I think that everything that Tolstoy says in there, he said earlier in the book, and it's just an extra 50 pages of stuff. I want to thank you all for sticking this out with me. You know, what was supposed to be a 6-week long readathon ended up taking me 7 months, but you know what? I finished it. I finished it for the second time. How many times have you read it? That was really hostile, I'm sorry. The first thing that I took note of was this quote where he said, I'm paraphrasing, but he said something like, the bumblebee is only recognizable as life in relation to other life forms. And that really stood out to me because, you know, like, we can only talk about people as people in relation to other people. We can't really say anything about someone unless they know what they do and say and how it affects other people. Just like we can't really talk about historical events on their own. We have to talk about what caused that event and what that event caused. And that's sort of an idea that he carries throughout these epilogues. Next, I talked about Madame Rostov setting up Nikolai with Mary. I thought it was really funny how she pretended she had like no investment in her son's marriage. There was a quote like, "I only wish it for your sake. It doesn't matter to me." I'm a Madame Rostov stan. I think she's very funny, and I wish we'd gotten more of her. Not that I want any more of this book. I love War and Peace, I really do, but I've had enough. Oh, I also took a note about, like, Nikolai's character arc in the end being him, like, learning that it's bad to beat his serfs. Wait, I'm not sure if they're serfs anymore. They might have been freed by Andre. But, like, when he is in charge of all of these, like, peasants, like, it's a huge moral win for him that he doesn't beat them anymore. I took a note that said, the epilogue doesn't need to exist, it just makes me sad. I feel like that was in response to, like, Sonia not getting a very satisfying ending. I've read it twice. I honestly already forgot what happens to Sonia. Probably nothing. Oh, that's right. She just, like, wanders around bitter and everybody is, like, mean to her. What? He also talks about Natasha and how when Natasha became a mother, she gave up singing and stopped being like a dramatic person, and like all of her spirit just disappeared. And in the end, she was just like a very grown, like reserved, fertile woman. He kept calling her fertile. There's also a very funny rant in here about like the purpose of marriage being to create a family and not to marry for pleasure. Like, yes, that can sound outdated, but a lot of the epilogue is about the reality of marriage and of choosing to build a life with somebody day after day, not just when you're swept up with the passions of war and love. I also took a note that Natasha naming her son Petya is really sad. I don't know, Petya's death is one of the few moments in this book that, like, really gets me. It's just so sad. I haven't been in front of the camera in a month. I'm really liking this thing that I do on my channel now where I'll pop in, make a video, and say, I'm back, and then I disappear for another month. Oh, I took another note about the way that Pierre, like, looks at and talks to and thinks about women, because there's this part when Natasha is really upset with Pierre and she's yelling at him for not devoting any time to his family, especially when his child is sick, and Pierre is just standing there like, this means nothing to me because I know that there's nothing I can do about it and I'm in a good mood and I'm not gonna let this silly woman ruin it. Tolstoy, I cannot stand you. Back to this note, Tolstoy doesn't, like, hate women exactly. He just thinks that they're really silly and really funny. And, you know, maybe that's just the male characters in this book. I should give Tolstoy more credit than that because, like, maybe Pierre is just the misogynist. But it's like every woman in this book. Yeah, there's a note here about how Sonia just became a maid. I hate it here. I get that most of the reason that the first epilogue exists is because he wanted to talk about the, like, government conspiracy that was bubbling up, because that's actually originally what War and Peace was supposed to be about. Tolstoy wanted to talk about like that political conspiracy, but then he was like, oh, I can't talk about that without talking about 1812, and I can't talk about 1812 without talking about 1806. And before he knew it, he had written like 1,200 pages of a book that he hadn't even set out to write. And I will say that the first epilogue is redeemed in my eyes because of how good the ending is. When Andre's son is like looking at the stars and thinking about how he's going to do something really great and change the world, I think that that's a really hopeful ending. Oh, I took maybe 4 bullet points for the entirety of Epilogue 2. I did my usual thing where I like put in my headphones and I just go for a walk. And I said, I'm gonna walk until I have finished War and Peace. And finish it I did yesterday. So the second epilogue opens with this like breakdown of the popular historical narrative about like the movement of Europeans westward following the Enlightenment, and how like the narrative that we have been taught is that everything that happened in this time was the result of like a couple like genius men and their genius books. And he spends the rest of the epilogue talking about how that's not true at all, because there is no way to summarize what pushes the collective will of humanity towards one thing or another. And if we only focus on the generals and the monarchs and the writers, then we've got a really good history of writers and monarchs, but we don't have a history of humanity. He talks a lot about how you can say whatever you want about history because every day millions of different things happen, and if you focus on certain individual details, you can craft whatever narrative you want. But by crafting a satisfying narrative, there is so much of the big picture that you are choosing to leave out. You can craft a narrative and say whatever you want, but the truth is, history isn't a satisfying narrative. It's a billion things happening all at once, and you will never be able to craft them into something that makes sense and is also true. And that's kind of the ending of War and Peace. There is no way to craft a satisfying narrative of history that shows humanity in all of its complexity and which accurately reflects the collective will of a people. This book is enormous and messy. It goes in a million different directions. Some of them are satisfying, some of them are not. Some of them fill me with rage and others with joy. And it really feels like an entire life is packed within these pages. I don't think I'm ever gonna read it again, or at least not for a very long time. I've definitely had my fill of this story for a while, but I am very proud of myself for finishing it, and I'm very thankful that I now have these characters in my life. Thank you all for reading along with me and for watching these videos, and especially thank you, Kelsey, for running this read along with me and for your patience. Now, for those of you who have stuck it out till the end, we are going to be having our live stream next Wednesday, August 25th. We are going to be having a live stream discussion of War and Peace, talking about our favorite scenes, our favorite characters, what we loved and what we hated, possibly playing some games. I don't really know how like booktube live streams work. I've watched a couple, but I have never participated in one. Kelsey is a veteran. She runs like readathons every other week and like runs reading sprints. She's just a booktube god. I'm sure you're all subscribed to Kelsey by now, but if you're not, comment down below your thoughts on the ending of War and Peace. And comment things that you want us to talk about in the live stream. That's all. I'll see you guys next time. I'll see you at the live stream.